Shalom, Israel. Hey, this is Brother Yabal. Brother Jew won't be joining us tonight. He had a family tragedy, family death. And so the brother's going to spend time with his family and he'll be back with us maybe next week. So we're going to endeavor to talk a little bit more about about Jacob's trouble. And so last week we told you that Jacob's trouble started with the ransack of Jerusalem. Jacob's trouble all started with the death of the apostles, right? And then we went on into Deuteronomy 28 and we showed you what Jacob's trouble would look like in general. Now we're going to get into tonight the beast, because the beast is the enemy of Israel. And what the beast did was implement these things that we saw in Deuteronomy 28. See, it's the beast who put the yoke of iron around our neck until we were destroyed. And so we want to get into a little bit of that tonight. And so we're going to start off by going to the book of Baruch, which is in Apocrypha. And we're going to start with chapter 2. And we're going to go down to verse 20 and read 20 through 29. Baruch 2, 20 through 29. Now, see, when we sinned, the Lord punished us. And I'm going to show you a sentence that he gave us. And when the sentence was given to us by the prophets, we did not listen. And as a result, the punishment was worse. And so I want to start in this book because it explains that. And I want to show you that you have to do what the Most High says. So let's start reading. Verse 20. This is Baruch chapter 2, verse 20. For thou hast sent out thy wrath and indignation upon us, and thou hast spoken by thy servants, the prophets, saying. So this is talking about when it says thou hast sent, it's talking about the Most High, because it's the Most High who speaks to his prophets. So let's read that again. For thou hast sent out thy wrath and indignation upon us, as thou hast spoken by thy servants, the prophets, saying, Thus saith the Lord, bow down your shoulders to serve the king of Babylon. So shall you remain in the land that I gave unto your fathers. So the Lord said, Look here, Israel. Now you're going to go into hard labor under the king of Babylon. Now, if you listen to what I'm telling you and you do it, you get to stay in your land. Now let's keep reading verse 22. But if ye will not hear the voice of the Lord, to serve the king of Babylon, I will cause to cease out of the cities of Judah. And from without Jerusalem, the voice of mirth and the voice of joy, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, and the whole land shall be desolate of inhabitants. So the Lord said, Now, if you don't listen to me, I'm going to cause everyone to be removed, either by death or being relocated by slavery. Verse 24. Now, I want you to keep seeing this theme throughout the history of Israel. We sin and we go into slavery. Now, we showed you when you look up slaves, what you're going to find is our people, because throughout history, that's what people have known. Keep reading. But we would not hearken unto thy voice. We, the Israelites, would not hearken to serve the king of Babylon. Therefore hast thou made good the words that thou spakest by thy servants the prophets, namely that the bones of our kings and the bones of our fathers should be taken out of their place. Do you see that? See, now I told you that we sin and we go into slavery. And I told you when you look it up, you find us. And I'm not saying no one else has served. What I'm telling you is their servitude never looked like ours. See, we were removed from our land and we were renamed. See, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel did not keep their names. When we got to America, we became Jones, Johnson, Smith. That's not who we were. See, we carried the name of our father. the God, the Lord of Israel. But when the enemy took us, he changed our name, because remember in Psalms 83, I showed you that their plan was to put us in slavery so that the name of Israel would be no longer remembered. Verse 25, and lo, they are cast out to the heat of the day and to the frost of the night, and they died in great miseries by famine, by sword, and by pestilence. And the house which is called by thy name hast thou laid waste, as it is to be seen this day, for the wickedness of the house of Israel and the house of Judah. See, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, they were sinning. O Lord our God, thou hast dealt with us after all thy goodness and according to all that great mercy of thine. Because, see, the Lord warned us over and over. He sent us judges and delivered us, but now it gets worse. Verse 28, as thou spakest by thy servant Moses in the day when thou didst command him to write the law before the children of Israel, saying, if ye will not hear my voice, surely this very great multitude shall be turned into a small number among the nations, where I will scatter them. See, the Lord did it to us, but we caused it. See, you can't live in anyone's house and not live by their rules. The Lord gave us a land flowing with milk and honey. And if you were to open your doors to your nephew, he says, Unc, I want to come in and stay with you for a while. I got a job in the city. He's moving from far across the country. I got a job in the city and I need a little time to put some money away. And then I'm going to get my own place. But then when he gets there, he's raucous. He's tearing up everything you have. He's talking to you disrespectfully. He's got people over to 3, 4, 5 in the morning. The music's loud. You can't sleep. Your wife can't sleep. You're going to have to put him out. And that's what we went through. Let me rephrase that. That's what the Lord has gone through with us. Okay? Let's go ahead now, if we would, to Revelation 17 and 12, because I want to lay a foundation. After that, we're going to go to the book of Daniel. But I need to lay a foundation before we go there. There's something that you have to understand. Let me see. There's something that you have to understand. I want you to see before we get there. Let me stop sharing my screen. All right. Let me see. All right, so we're going to go to the book of Revelation. And before we get to reading in Daniel, I want you to know exactly what we're talking about when you see this specific word. Revelation 17 and 12 is where we're going. Now, Daniel had a vision, and then John the Revelator had a similar vision in the book of Revelation. We're not going to cover Revelation tonight. We're going to get through the Greek captivity tonight, and then next week we endeavor to get into Revelation a little bit. But this gets into what we're getting into next week. So let's read, but you need this foundation. Revelation 17 and 12. And the 10 horns, which thou sawest, are 10 kings. So what I'm trying to establish to you is, when we're reading these prophecies, a horn is a king, okay? Let's read that again. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So we're going to talk about the beast tonight, okay? But we're going to let you know that the beast is kings who have kingdoms. See, the beast is not some fictional animal that's going around and secretly destroying people. The beast is a human. So let's go on to Daniel now, chapter 7. Daniel 7. All right. All right. Before we get started, I want to give all glory, honor, and praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shah. All right. All right. We can't get into these scriptures without the power of the Lord. We need his spirit so that we can minister this thing in a way that it has free course in our hearts, and that we can break down these walls of Christian understanding and get into what the Lord wants us to know. So let's go now. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7, verse 3. So we just showed you the word beast in Revelation. It says, and four great beasts. Remember, we're talking about kings and kingdoms, right? And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. So these four beasts, these four kingdoms are different from each other. It says the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth. All right. And made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Let me get to Daniel in my Bible real quick. I should have been there already. My bad, my bad, my bad. Didn't realize I had turned from it. So when we talk about this beast, the first beast is the kingdom of Assyria. And so it describes it as the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. So I want to show you a depiction of that real quick. And I know you've seen this before, but really didn't know what it was about. So let's see. All right, so this is what it's talking about. Let's read that again. No, I got to find it in my Bible. My bad. You notice it has a man's head, it has a lion's body, and it has wings. Okay? So let's go back to that real quick. Brother 57. Won't take me but a second. Won't take me but a second. All right, all right. So let's read that again. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. So that's what you're seeing right there. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. So this particular kingdom was overcome. And it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So now we're talking about the Babylonian kingdom. The Babylonian kingdom took over. Okay? So now we go down to verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear. And it raised itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. Now, this is Media Persia. And we're going to get back to our screen, and we're going to prove that to you. And I need to put that on the screen and reread that. I read that very choppy. Let me reread that to you. All right, all right. We got the first was like a lion. We showed you a depiction of that. That's actually a mural that's in a museum, and you can find those same murals in the Museum of Britain. And we're going to show you some pictures tonight. Then we get down to verse 5, and it says, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. So I told you that's Media Persia, right? And so what we're going to do is go to Daniel 8. And let's look at let's start in verse 1. Daniel 8, verse 1. It says, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream. So I told you in verse verse 4 that it was talking about Babylon. Started off talking about Assyria, and with Assyria, the northern kingdom was carried off by the Assyrians. Okay. So now, after this, what we're going to do is follow what happened to the southern kingdom, because the northern kingdom, I'm not going to show you that tonight. Well, we're not even going to get to it. We're just going to say they got carried off to a far away. After they left Assyria, they went off to a faraway land. Okay. So let's read this again. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. See, Daniel's going to have another vision where the first vision is explained to him. Look, it says it again, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Same, look at this. I'm still in chapter 8. Let me get to Daniel 8. I'm still in chapter 7. We'll get it right. Give me just a second. All right, here we go. Here we go. Where do we want to start at? Let's go. Let's go and start in verse 1. In the third year, the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. So he said, just like what appeared to him first, he had another dream, okay? And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram. This is what I want you to get, which had two horns. And the two horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Remember, we just read that? We had, remember, I showed you where a horn is a nation. And we showed you in Daniel chapter 7, verse 5, and it says, and behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. That's what it means by one was higher than the other. All it's saying is that the Persians were stronger than the Medes, even though it was a Media Persia kingdom. Okay? The Persians are stronger. That's all it's saying. It's no different than how the US and Britain pull together, but actually Britain is held up by the US. Okay? So let's read that again. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had two horns. So the ram was actually made up of two kingdoms, and the two horns or kingdoms were high, but one, so they're both powerful, but one was more powerful than the other, and the higher came up last. So you had the Medes ruling first, and then the Persians came up afterwards, okay? But they joined in power. So watch this. Remember, we talked about the bear had three ribs in his mouth. Let's see why. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast or no kingdoms might stand before him. So this ram was going northward, it was going westward, it was going southward, and defeating everything in its path. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he goat. I want you to take note of this because I'm going to show you something about this later. A he goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. So this particular kingdom came from the west, and he moved so quickly in defeating every nation in front of him. The Bible records he didn't touch the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. We know that the horn is a kingdom, is a king, is a kingdom. Okay. Now let's go back to Daniel chapter 7 real quick. All right, here we go. Now we're going to Daniel 7 and 6. We're going to talk about this he goat. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. That makes no sense on the surface, but this is what we want to break down tonight, okay? So there was a ruler, and we're going to show you his name in the Bible. There was a ruler who came up, and part of his name was the Great, okay? Now, this was a freak, and he used to actually fight in leopard skin. He liked little boys, okay? This was a freak. And I'm going to show you who he is in just a second. Now, let's go back over to Daniel chapter 8, where we were. So that was Daniel chapter 7 and 6, okay? Now, this freak came up and he defeated the Medes and Persians. And we're about to read about that. So in verse 5, let's read it again. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat. So calling this old wicked man a goat, came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Verse 6, and he came to the ram. Remember, we're talking about the Medes and Persians. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. He attacked the Medes and Persians. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler. He was moved with fury against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. He destroyed the Medes and Persians. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. I want you to see all this because we got to show who this being is, okay? Now, what I want to do, well, let's keep reading this. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. Now, this is pretty much the same thing we saw in Daniel chapter 7. But before we let the scriptures explain what it's saying there, I want to show you something. Now, we're going to talk about this he-goat some more, but let's drop down to verse 21 real quick. Okay? Drop down to verse 21. Now, in verse 21, it replaces the word he with rough. Watch this. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now, watch this. So this he-goat, this rough goat, is the king of Grecia. And I'm telling you that this is Alexander the Great. And I'm going to show you his name in just a second and prove that. Now, it says a couple of things about him. It calls him rough, and it says that he is the first king. Okay? So I want you to see what this word rough means. We're going to go into the Strong's Concordance. Look at this rough goat. Okay, you see right here to the left, rough and goat. H8163 is rough. Let's check it out. Let's see how this word is pronounced.
Strong's H8163. Sa'ir.
Yeah. Now watch this. The KJV translates, let me highlight this. I want y'all to see this. The KJV translates Strong's H8163 in the following manner. It says kid, which is a baby goat. It says goat, but this is what I want you to get. It says devil. See, this is the devil. And we'll explain some more about the devil next week. But I want you to get that this is the devil. I got several things to read about the devil tonight in these scriptures, okay? This is the devil. And he's the first to rule over Greece. And we need to know who this devil is, okay? So let's go now, if we could, back to the Apocrypha. We're going to jump around a bit. We're going to go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. Going to go to 1 Maccabees We're going to go, and if you celebrated the Feast of Dedication this year or in years previous, you know something about the Maccabees, okay? Those were some powerful brothers. Powerful, powerful, powerful. They stood up and defeated these devils. All right. So remember we said that this devil was the first. So we want to see the first what? All right, all right. Here we go. First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian. See, I told you this is Alexander the Great. And he wasn't Greek, he was, according to this, Macedonian. And when we look it up further, we find out that he's an Edomite. Okay? Because you can trace his father back and find out what his lineage was. So let's look at this again. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. That's just what we read in Daniel, right? The two horns, the ram with two horns, that he reigned in his stead. So he took over the rulership of the whole earth. The first over Greece. So when it said the first in Daniel, it was saying that he was the first king over Greece. Okay? I want to read out of my pocket, or do I want to read off the screen? We're going to read all the way down to verse 5. It says, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. He didn't have any mercy. He slew them. That's what that devil did. And went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. This was a prideful devil. Verse 4. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. Tributaries mean that they had to pay him. Watch this. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Now, I want y'all to stay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to leave that up on the screen. And I'm going to go back to Daniel chapter 8 and read something. All right, so we're going to go to Daniel 8 and 7. It says, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler. I told you that's fury against him, and smote the ram. That's what we just read about. The Persians and Medes were destroyed, and break his two horns. That's what it means. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. All right. So let's go down to verse 22 real quick. Daniel 8 and 22. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it. Let's go to verse 21. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. What is the rough goat? What is the devil? The king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. That's all it's saying. So when we went back over here and we talked about the verse 8, therefore the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. We just read about that in verse 21 and 22. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So the great horn actually represents Alexander the Great. Verse 22, now that being broken, remember when we were in First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 5, it says he perceived that he should die. And then it says, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. So what it's saying is when Alexander dies, four generals are going to stand up in his place and split his kingdom. Okay? That's all it's saying. All right, so now we're going to go back to the Apocrypha, going back to First Maccabees chapter 1 and going to verse 6, and it's going to explain exactly what I said. Wherefore he called, let's go back to verse 5. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Verse 6. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable. So he called honorable men up and had been brought up with him from his youth. He's been knowing these four men all of his life and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. You see that? You see what he did? So he called his four generals up and he parted the kingdom to them. Now watch this. Verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. He took over the whole known earth in 12 years on horseback. Verse 8. And his servants bare rule every one in his place. So they took over. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. What happened when Esau took over? Evils were multiplied in the earth. That's what happens when this devil's in charge. Now we're going to go back to Daniel chapter 8. And this time I'm going to put it on the screen, okay? Because we're going to be in there a few verses. I want you to see something. So let's stop presenting so I can pull this back up. Trying to watch the time. This is a long one here, and it's getting away from us, but that's okay. We're not in a hurry. We'll go several weeks if we have to. Where is my Bible app? Hope I didn't close it out. I think I closed out my Bible app. We'll just open another one. Don't worry about it. No, we didn't close it out. Here we go. All right. Let's do this. Let's back out of here. Should still be in Daniel 8. All right, so now we're going to go down to verse 22. I think is where we're at, Daniel 8 and 22. Yeah, we're going to start right there. So now we're still talking about the horn being broken, which is signifying the death of Alexander the Great, Alexander the Freak. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, so his four honorable men that grew up with him, they became kings. It says, four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation. So out of the nation of Greece, you get four kingdoms, but not in his power. So you're seeing how Europe, modern day Europe was started? You're looking at it right there. Alexander came out of Macedonia and he destroyed all of the provinces of Greece. He conquered all the provinces of what later became Greece, okay? And then upon his death after 12 years of rulership, his kings divided up, his generals divided up into four nations, okay? Verse 23, and in the latter time of their kingdom, talking about the four generals, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. This is what I want you to get. Now, we already had Alexander who had called the devil, and now after these four kings had transgressed, because remember, sins were multiplied when they took rulership. One comes up after them that understands dark sayings. See, what I'm trying to get you to see is when the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but powers and principalities and rulers of wickedness in heavenly places, those are not metaphors. You're actually dealing with devils. You're dealing with warlocks. You're dealing with witches. You're dealing with witchcraft. See, this guy understood dark sentences. Let's keep reading. Verse 24. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. Well, if it's not by his own power and he understands dark sayings, who do you think the power is from? And he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper and practice what? Witchcraft. And shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. What's he do to Israel? He destroys us. Why? I showed you in Baruch at the very beginning. Because we didn't obey God. Verse 25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper. What? He's going to cause witchcraft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. Prideful devil. And by peace shall destroy many. Oh, you know how they do. They go out there and they're always trying to give you a peace proposal. It's like Israel going over there bombing Iran, talking about they destroyed the nuclear facilities. And then when Iran starts bombarding them, all of a sudden they want to get on TV and talk about peace. And we can do commerce together. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. You see that? What I'm trying to show you is we got the devil, we got dark sentences, and we got craft. That's how these people rule. And so what you have to do is you have to guard your heart. Because when you're dealing with these people, they have a evil spirit behind them that has been here since the Garden of Eden. So he has centuries upon centuries of practice that you don't know about. And so you're out there trying to negotiate when what the scriptures told you was not to make any deals with these devils. When we were given the land of Israel, we were told not to make any covenants with them. But you want to say it's okay to marry them. But isn't marriage a covenant? You have to guard your heart. All right, let's go back to the Apocrypha real quick. And then we're not going to come back to Daniel, I don't think. We're going to go back to the Maccabees, and we're going to look at some stuff. It's 8:43. Let me see. Stop sharing my screen. Let's present. All right, we're going back to Maccabees, chapter 1. So we want to see who this wicked one is that came up after them, okay? So we went to verse 9, First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 9. We'll start reading there again. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Okay, so now this kingdom has been existing for 137 years. And here comes this most wicked devil. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men. So what do we have in Israel? Wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant. Now, you see what Daniel was talking about? It says, let's go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. See, there were many persuaded. They went along with these wicked men out of Israel. Verse 13, then certain other people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. So look, now they're going to reject the ordinances of God. Go to the king and say, king, we want to be part of you. We want to be Greek. I threw that in for y'all that are out there pledging. Verse 14, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem, according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant. So when they took on the covenant of the heathens, they forsook the holy covenant and joined, let's go back to verse 15, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Look, let me tell you something about pledging, about these fraternities and sororities. This is exactly what you're acting out. You're saying, but I didn't join to them. Let me tell you something. You're acting it out. That is a unholy covenant. And that's why you had to go through so much to join. That's why you got to cross the burning sands. See, when we ran from Rome in 70 AD and we went into Africa, what I told you was the Arabs were capturing us and selling us. And then they would take us across the Saharan desert. That's the burning sands. And when they would get us to the coast of Africa, they would sell us to the Grecians. And we're going to read about that in this series that we're doing. See, we're not African. Arabs did that to us. And later on, Africans did that to us. And the Bible records it. The Bible says that they sold the children of Israel. That's what Africans and Arabs did. And we're going to show you that. And that's what you're emulating when you are pledging. Verse 16. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt that he might have the dominion of two realms. See, Egypt was still in power. Kinda. I'm going to show you something. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Ptolemy said, he ain't putting me to death. Now watch this. Let's go down. Let's go to verse 20. Well, look at verse 19. He went on into Egypt and he took spoils thereof. But let's get to our people. Verse 20. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt. He returned again in the 143rd year and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. So on his way back, he's going to attack us now. Verse 21. Now, remember, we're talking about Jacob's trouble. Verse 21. And entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof. So he took our golden altar, he took our menorah and all the vessels. That's what this devil did. He went into God's temple and did this. Verse 22, and the table of the shewbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold. And this is very important what we're reading because Christ talks about this, and we're going to get into that next week. And the veil and the crown and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and gold and the precious vessels. Also, he took the hidden treasures, which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre. What did he do in Jerusalem? Made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. He declared himself to be Lord. They went in, if you read the stories about the Maccabees, they started actually taking defiled animals and sacrificing them on the altar of God. Verse 25, therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. So what happened to the women? When these devils came in, they let me pronounce that differently so they don't block me off of YouTube. When they came in, they forced themselves upon our women. And when you go sleeping with these heathen, you come out, you don't look the same. It says, and the beauty of women was changed. You can't sleep with beasts and then come out being the same. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. What happened? All of our women became pregnant. All of the married ones. All of the ones that were about to be married. You have to understand this. And you say, well, that makes all of us Edomites. No, it doesn't. See, we were scattered everywhere. And we had children after that. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. You see that? Let me get my apocrypha. Let me get my apocrypha. I want to show y'all something. Let's go down to verse 41. Let's see what this devil does. Let's go up to verse 38. Insomuch that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made an habitation of strangers and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. See, they attacked us again. Verse 37 says, thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. They defiled it by going in, and they also offered sacrifices of unclean animals. Verse 39, her sanctuary, the sanctuary of Jerusalem, was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Now watch this. Watch the arrogancy of this wicked ruler. And this is what I'm telling you that America and Israel are doing now. The Israelis. They attack a country and then they want to ceasefire and they want to call for peace. Watch this. Verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom. Now remember, Jerusalem's part of this kingdom now, that all should be one people. And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. What should everyone do? Leave his laws. Who is he really talking to? He's really talking to the Jews. He wants them to leave the laws of God. Verse 43. Yea, many also the Israelites consented to his religion. What are laws? They are religion. The Constitution of the United States is a religion. And the God of that religion are the politicians. Let's read it again. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. Verse 44, for the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem. I told you, this was really about Jerusalem. It wasn't about the other nations and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings. What were they to do at the temple? They weren't supposed to do any offerings anymore to our God. And sacrifice. We can't sacrifice for the forgiveness of sin. The Day of Atonement, that's washed out. The daily sacrifice to remove our sin, that's washed out. The drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days. Watch this, verse 46. And pollute the sanctuary and holy people. 47. Set up altars and groves and chapels of idols. See, that's what you got right here in America now. You get into a so-called black community, you got these churches on every corner. These are chapels of idols. Watch this. And sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. Keep that one in mind. You're going to need that one next week, because we're going to show you what Christ is talking about when he says the desolation of abomination. It says it in Daniel too, and Christ refers to that. We're going to bring you back here, okay? So that's, y'all remember this. This is going to be First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 47, okay? Watch this. Verse 48, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised. Well, we're going to keep showing you this thing. This didn't just happen in this with this horn or this kingdom. And make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation. How do you make your soul abominable? One of the main ways is sexual immorality. Does it not call homosexuality an abomination before the Lord? Watch this. What was the purpose of all this? Verse 49, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. That's what this was all about. Verse 50, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he should die. To keep our laws was punishable by death. Now, who are we harming by us going in and loving our brother as ourselves? Honoring our wife, and our wife showing reverence to their husband. Who are we hurting? Honoring our children, bringing them up in the nourishment, and bring them up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Who are we hurting? But what do they say over here? No praying at church. No mentioning of our God at church. But then they take you through and they tell you all about the about Greek mythology. They celebrate Christmas. They celebrate Easter. But I thought there was no religion in church. I mean, no religion in the school system. Verse 51. In the self same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, that's including Jerusalem, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Well, guess what? We're not sacrificing to our God. We're putting pigs on the altar and sacrificing to their God. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land. Now watch this. Watch this. Now these are the people that went along with this foolishness. Look what it calls our people that stood up and drove the Israelites. Who are those that are keeping the commandments? The Israelites into secret places, even whosoever they could flee for succor. So look, what I want you to get in that was verse 41 mainly. And it said, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. It sounded peaceful. But at the end, if you didn't keep these laws, once he got enough of us on his side, if you didn't keep these laws, you're going to be put to death. Let's go down to verse 60. I wanted you to see something. Remember, they weren't allowing us to circumcise our children. Verse 60. And that's why we have to be careful about attacking our women. We have had some great women. At the risk of their lives, at the risk of their own lives, I want you to see what some of our great women did, okay? First Maccabees chapter 1, verse 60. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women. What did these Grecian devils do? They put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. Then they went out and found the people who circumcised them. And let me show you what they did to them. We have great men too, and great women. But usually it's supposed to be the man who does circumcising. So we're going to read 61. I want you to see this. And they hanged the infants up their necks and rifled their houses. Let's go to verse 60 again. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. You see that? But let's see what happened. Verse 62. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. So here we are in the midst of, if you don't forsake the laws of God, you're going to be put to death. We have women still circumcising their children. Now, the children got killed for that. The women got killed for that. The people who did the circumcision got killed for that. But our people were resolved to do what's right and serve our God. And then we had people who say, you know what? These same people, they're saying, I'm not eating any unclean thing. You can put that pig before me, I'll starve to death before I eat it. You can put that rabbit before me, I'll starve to death before I eat it. I'm not eating shrimp, crab, and lobster. Verse 63. Wherefore, the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. And there was very great wrath upon Israel. What we're talking about is Jacob's trouble. And you have to go back and get last week's lesson to understand this, because we showed you that Jacob's trouble is going to be started with the death of the apostles as well as the siege of Jerusalem, the destruction of Jerusalem. But it said it wasn't going to end until Christ came back and redeemed us. So all these things that the Israelites are going through is Jacob's trouble. Now, I want to show you a picture before we get out of here tonight. Here it goes right here. Let me close this out. Because we want to, like I told you last week, if you don't know who the people are, then you can be fooled as to when Jacob's trouble starts. Okay? So I want to show you what the Assyrians actually carved out on their walls at the time that they took us into captivity. Because I told you that the Assyrians took the northern kingdom first before Judah went into captivity into Babylon. So watch this. This is an actual carving. They have this, they got this from the walls in Assyria. They actually had carved out the great battle where the Assyrians conquered the Israelites and took us into captivity. Now they've got this in the Museum of Britain, and you can see it. What I want you to see is these guys over here with these hats like Ku Klux Klans, those are Assyrians. Okay? Those are Assyrians. Okay, those are Assyrians right there. These people with their hands up, with the afros, those are Israelites. These three men right here in front of the Ku Klux Klan, and these brothers that are bowed down and having to worship these devils, these are Israelites. Notice the afros. And even when you looked at the thumbnail for this here lesson, I showed you something similar. These were the same murals from the same war. Okay? This is what Israelites looked like. So when did we turn white? Oh, I'm going to show you some more stuff throughout this lesson. So it's 9:04 p.m. We're going to get back into this next week. I'm going to look at it and talk to Jew, see if we want to do some more on the Greek captivity or go ahead and get into the next beast. That next beast is a devil too. Okay? And we're going to get into Revelation quite a bit because there are a lot of things that the church had told you that has to happen that has already happened. We're going to start showing you that stuff. See, there's some stuff going on right now. You know what? I'm not even going to say that. We will show you that if we're going that. We don't want to jump ahead. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to log out. I want to tell you, I love you, Israel. Pray for Brother Jew. And we will be back here, Lord willing, next week. Let me stop sharing my screen. We'll be back next week. And I just want to say shalom to you.